we will start talking about the workforce partnership revamping statewide communication strategies. And I am joined by some fantastic people out of Oregon. And I will introduce myself. My name is Max Shelkoff. I am a senior mobile solution consultant with Engage by Cell. And Georgia, if you'd like to introduce yourself first.
Hi, Georgia Conrad with the Oregon Workforce Partnership. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Oregon's 9 workforce boards.
Fantastic. Katrina, go ahead.
Yeah, Katrina Sturgeon with Northwest Oregon Work, and I oversee the Workforce Benefit Navigator Grant. Happy to be here.
Awesome. And we have a quick little poll, I believe, that is going to launch, maybe. Maybe that's on the next slide. That's okay, though. Oh, there it is. It jumped up. And in this poll, if you want to tell us what kind of organization you are with, the participants, so we can have an idea of what everybody is doing and what everybody hopes to learn, that is always helpful. Let's see. And panelists, unfortunately, we don't get to participate, so that's okay, though. We'll give that a quick another little minute there, and we'll go ahead and dive in. Yes, thank you, Anna. And I am joined behind the scenes, Anna from Engage by Cell. She is running the slide, so if you hear me talking to Anna, she is not a ghost. She is here. All right. Anna, perfect. Thank you. Let's see. A lot of people out of workforce boards, as to be expected, and a lot of out of other. Love it. All right, fantastic. So I will start by telling a little bit about Engage by Cell. We have been in business, I believe it's actually 18 years now. And those are some examples of some of our customers and clients who've been with us for quite a while in the workforce development kind of realm and world. We specialize in all things to do with mobile device-based engagement, such as text messaging, mobile web apps, GPS mapping, all of that exciting mobile tech. And we specifically have been working in workforce development for, I believe, a full decade now. So we're very familiar with kind of the ins and outs of all things to do with workforce development, engagement in that area. And we are a cloud-based, SaaS-based provider of tech. And I will go and let George or Katrina talk a little bit about the Oregon Workforce Partnership.
Sure, the Oregon Workforce Partnership, like I said, is the association of Oregon's 9 workforce boards. So each of the board's directors, the executive directors, sit on my board and help inform my work on how I can be responsive to their needs through tools, through collaborative projects or grants, advocacy work. We have some lobbyists we work with to help put bills in the legislature that are responsive to many of our statewide projects.
Fantastic. Anything to add to that, Katrina? Did Georgia kill it?
I think she killed it. I did not know more about my grant or if that's enough.
Nah, it's all right. We'll keep going. Thank you. Oh. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? Georgia, you and I have been doing business together and working on some projects for maybe 4, 5, 6 months now, I think it is. So this is going to be a little bit of a different webinar approach than what we've kind of done in the past. And we thought it would be valuable to kind of bring someone to the table who is kind of new to the platforms and had some goals and what kind of the implementation and what kind of the start out of the process looks like versus bringing in some of our other clients who are already kind of in it and things like that. So it should be an interesting perspective to hear, you know, your kind of goal and what triggered the interest in Engage by Cell and so on and so forth. But if you want to talk about the goal real quick, and then I'll talk about the solutions. I know the slide says obviously equipping the benefits navigators with some tools, and then we'll kind of dive on in. But if you want to touch on the goal real quick, go ahead.
Sure. I think though part of the initiation of this project came from the funding source. So, the state of Oregon came to us and said, we have set aside some money for benefits navigators, and we're not sure how we're going to divide this. And OWP collectively was like, well, we'd like to be able to divide it ourselves. And they were like, no, we have that all mapped out. So they gave all the boards a set amount of money to support benefits navigation. And I asked each of my board members to kick me back some funds so we could have a statewide approach to that. Regional autonomy is really important, but there is a statewide connectivity that's also important to make sure that
Common goals. Yeah.
the common goals across the state really are met, and there's some cohesiveness between how we get there and how we,
Facilitate those goals.
get past barriers, all those types of things. So with this, it was how do we meet rural and urban needs in a cost-effective way to, get past the common barriers of translation and initiation into the programs, registration, those types of things.
Fantastic. All right. And I know just because working with a lot of different workforce boards and organizations across the country, everybody kind of has a different title, somewhat of a different little role. Can you explain, maybe Katrina, what the role of a benefits navigator is specifically, right?
Yeah. So the grant itself is under the Future Ready Oregon grant. The objective and intention was for innovation. Really, it's a pilot program looking at opportunities to engage priority populations in the workforce system. And each of our regions and workforce boards within Oregon gets to innovate unique ways that we're going to adapt to that. The universal, or I guess the statewide approach and unity is in Engage by Cell. So we all have this as part of our grant. But again, it's going to be diverse from region to region how we do that. So the objective, again, is to connect with those priority populations, which include communities of color, rural, frontier communities, older populations and engaging in the workforce system. And so this kind of platform is going to offer one-stop shopping in regards to all the different resources. So the navigator is either going to be located in a WorkSource office, or for our grant in our region, they're going to be in nonprofits and community-based organizations. So these folks will have access to the platform here that summarizes or gives, click-throughs to other resources in a one space there. So it's a great tool. It's a wood shopping as far as that goes. And I think it's going to be really neat to see fully implemented. Did that answer your question?
Awesome. That does very thoroughly. I appreciate it very much. So we have this kind of common goal across, right? And Georgia is kind of put together the partnership to facilitate some of these common goals and give regional autonomy, like you said, to folks like Katrina and their teams. And the solutions that Engage by Cell is providing is the text messaging and mobile web platforms, right? So that's kind of what the ladies were touching on there. I'll go into the next slide and kind of explain what the platforms are, and then we'll have more of kind of a conversation on how they're hoping to implement it and what goals there are and things like that. So text messaging obviously isn't a new technology. It's been around for quite a while now, but what makes Engage by Cells a little bit different is the ability to have mass communications, right? So a couple clicks of a button, everybody can receive the text message. For example, the super common use case, something like, hey, job fair next Friday, click this link to register, something along those lines. But what we strive to do at Engage by Cell is go down a couple more layers of engagement too, not just that mass kind of blanket model, right? So within our platform, you can also have one-to-one conversations. So maybe a career navigator or maybe a case manager, whomever's kind of facilitating that one-on-one engagement can also do that through our platform as well, right? And as many of us know, if the primary means of communicating anymore is just email and picking up the phone, trying to dial out things like that, it's getting tougher and tougher every day, right? And I just wanted to mention that because statistically, what we find is text messages, and really why we utilize texting as the main engagement tool, is we see consistent 95% open read rates, right? So you're getting a much more likelihood that that individual is going to read that text, and not only read it, but they're going to read it much quicker. If you do have really good email open rates of, let's say, 40 to 50%, something along those lines, usually people are reserving that time frame for when I have a second or at the end of the day or something like that. So not only are they more likely to read that text, but they're more likely to read it much quicker too. So I believe we have another poll here just to kind of learn about how everyone else is currently engaging with folks and see what's out there. I'm anticipating a lot of emails in this response. Don't see too much snail mail anymore, which that's okay. But there are a lot of different methodologies, and we just like to see what everybody's kind of implementing across the country. I know Georgia, Katrina, are you using any of these other methods right now as well? No, not really.
Email. Just email. Yeah, to our
Mhm.
park distribution list.
Yeah. And that's typical.
I could get quite a few phone calls. Sometimes when we put out some marketing, then I'll get job seekers calling me directly about programs. But I would put it even farther with text messaging is that not only do you get a higher open rate, you get a higher immediate response rate. People are like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna get that off my list, and they do it and it's done. And for us, that's a huge win. When you
And I'm a big believer in kind of the shotgun method too. I mean, if you have additional tools at your disposal, use them all. I mean, we all know, we were just talking about it in the little waiting room before we jumped on here on how we're all communicating all day long via email, text, Slack, all the different methodologies. And sometimes you have to use everything, right, to get everybody's attention. So I think it's important to use all tools available out there. All right. Do we have some result then? Email, not a surprise there. A lot of people still using email. It is the primary mean of communicating, and phone calls, of course. I am happy to see we have 50% using texting there. So that is exciting. I like that. And some app notifications as well. That's pretty progressive. I like to see the tech get implemented here, and then 0% snail mail. So that's not exciting at all. All right. So the other tool and the other platform that Engage Myself provides is a mobile web. Okay. And for those of you who may or may not be aware of what a mobile web app is, it's important to kind of start there. So we're all very familiar with native applications, which is just the kind of technical industry term for the app that you actually hard download to your device. We all have 80 of them on our phone, right? And we used to build those, and probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, we started to get a lot more feedback from our clients saying, hey, it's getting tougher and tougher to get people to hard download things to your devices, right? And I do feel for that, right? I was just visiting some friends in a larger city, and I had my rental car, and it was raining, and I had to download 2 different apps to park the rental car, and I was not loving that, right? So we transitioned to this mobile web app platform that kind of breaks that hard download barrier because it is all web-based. It's all URL-based, so that access to these apps looks like scanning a QR code, and boom, up pops what looks, feels, and acts just like a native app, essentially. And it also being URL-based pairs really well with the texting. You can envision pushing out a text message to a bunch of people or an individual person that you're working with and saying, hey, click this link to register, or can you please upload this doc? And that individual can click that link in that text message, and boom, up pops that mobile web app. But they are very interactive in the sense that you can include tons of different engagement tools in it. Images, videos, polls, surveys, document upload, and it enables that person to have access to all those resources at any time when they need it. Okay. So those are the 2 main tools we're going to be talking about. So now I'm going to transition to the hard-hitting questions here for Georgia and Katrina, and really pick their brain on why they chose Engage by Sell, what was appealing to the platforms, and what hopefully are the outcomes. Because again, this is an exciting kind of perspective that we don't see all the time of the beginning stages of it, right? So Georgia, Katrina, what were kind of the main challenges in the current processes of what you were doing, maybe the engagement you were trying? I know we just touched on email and things, but what was kind of the main draw that made you want to implement Engage by Sales platforms?
Do you have something, Katrina?
Oh, I mean, you were part of that initial conversation, so I can build off of what you say, but I think you're
Yeah, we as I said earlier, we're struggling with these common barriers of how do we meet people where they're at, how do we engage people that are not native English speakers? And how do we initially engage them and get the follow-up engagement? Often we'll get that first meeting, but then we can't complete the process by getting their documentation or following up on job fairs. They just kind of come, they hope for this big, meet and greet and get a job right away. And the
Process is much longer than that.
Oh.
Yeah.
So the navigator, the whole point of the navigators is to take them through that process, to connect with them on their own terms. And so what are the challenges was how do we bridge all of these different needs and meet them where they're at? And then
I think you touch on a
I
really
think-
important thing there, though, is that follow-up process, right? I can just imagine, and I hear this all the time with the 60 plus workforce development boards we work with is, I can get that individual to walk into the job center and then they're gone, or they came to my job fair and then they're gone, right? Or if Katrina and her teams are just trying to send email after email after email, and if they're a younger person, they're not checking that, or anybody really. And if you're picking up the phone trying to call them, it's not going to work either. I mean, we all vet out phone calls nowadays too, right? I wait for it to go to voicemail. But I think it's important to have those individual little tools, those little touches, like you were saying, Georgia, on the follow-up process. It's much easier and streamlined to send out a text. And I think you said it maybe briefly on the slide before of, I can pick up my phone, see, hey, oh yeah, I see that text. I was supposed to get that piece of documentation over and it's done, right? So the follow-up process is a huge component to what we help with. Katrina, were you going to add to that?
Well, and it is more accessible. So when I think about when I'm people are promoting products or services to me, I genuinely respond more quickly to a text message, but I also engage in their thing more easily. So if there's a QR code I scan really quick and send a quick message to, or there's already a conversation that opens up that way. When I'm laying in bed at midnight and remembering, oh my gosh, I got to follow up on some things, I can still shoot that quick text and respond to that, whatever I had engaged in before. So that accessibility, that content, and some of the social stigma associated with other ways of communicating, that breaks down as well with subscribing, like me subscribing to a particular text feed.
Mhm.
So
And I think that, go ahead, Georgia.
just really appealed because it was a conduit to getting people to already existing information. So we're not duplicating information with Engage by Cell. We're getting people directly to that product or the service, right away with the QR code and with that guide, the navigator guide.
Yeah. And I think it was you, Katrina, that said stigma, right? And I'll age myself. I'm 31 years old, right? And when I started my career, it was like super frowned upon to text anybody in a professional environment, right? It was like, don't do that. That's not professional. That's not the way to go about it. And now I would even lean on when we're training new people at Engage by Cell, or, obviously all of these workforce board organizations are adopting texting. It's encouraged, it's one of the main methodologies of communicating nowadays. So I think it's important to recognize that stigma is long gone as well. It's here, whether we want it to be or not. So let's go ahead and try and adopt it to the best of our abilities, right? I see we got a question. Are navigators considered to be the frontline workers that are helping job seekers?
yeah, so within our grant, the definition is, so they're working directly with individuals one-on-one, and then bridging the gap between what's preventing them from engaging in workforce development systems. So WorkSource here in Oregon and lots of others. Yep. So they're frontline.
Perfect. Awesome. And if you want to go to the next slide, pretty please, Anna. And I know this is something we've already talked about a little bit, but I want to get more specific rather than broad. And again, I know this is very new to the OWP and everybody there, but I know we kind of gave an example of a blanket marketing that everybody can probably grasp, but is it kind of your intentions to give it on the individual level too, to the career navigators, to have those one-on-one conversations? How do you envision maybe getting creative with the texting? Is it going to be, give me some ideas here, hopefully specifically of what you're kind of planning to do with the texting.
Absolutely. So again, a reminder is the Workforce Benefit Navigator grant is about innovation and pilot. So it's a 3-year grant, and we have the chance to try lots of different ways. But we're going to do a pilot just within Clatsop County and see what that looks like, partnering with our WorkSource office. And then I have a community-based organization that's operating in Benton and Lincoln counties. And I'm thinking about a pilot specific there. And the target population is going to be our Latinx community and then the Guatemalan community too. So there's some ways that we can innovate the communication and then update. A big thing and a big request have been updates about appointments or upcoming things that specifically that people need to remember. So there's a couple different subgroups to go in, and I'm excited to try those out.
Yeah, I think it's important to, go back to that regional autonomy. Every region has the option to using it and what meets their needs best and most effectively. And one of the key pieces we did in the building of this text messaging piece to the app is we have 10 phone numbers, and we divided that up across the state so that every region has separate data system or a database that can track their own text messaging interaction. And we have all those lists associated with each region. So there's not any crossover. We don't have any HIPAA, data privacy issues. And that was really key in the planning.
Perfect. I love that. Yeah. And it is important to be aware that, data is the driving force to funding typically, right? We have to show the results to continue to operate many times. And that's an important thing to touch on, Georgia, is that everybody, the texting is also unique in the sense that it can be as micro or macro as you want it to be, right? So if you wanted, and just kind of depending on maybe even each region's need, right? Maybe it's just the blanketing component. Maybe it's the inbound capabilities of putting call to actions out into the community of, hey, text jobs to XYZ and getting those people enrolled, stay informed about career opportunities or education training, whatever it might be. And also, Katrina, it sounds like you have some exciting kind of unique demographics you're looking to hopefully engage with. And I always bring up my grandma. I love my grandma very much, and I still talk to her every day. And the main way that we communicate is through text message, right? So I think it's important to know and touch on that even older demographics anymore, that's their primary means of communicating a lot nowadays too. So exciting stuff. I'm excited to see what the results are as you're leading and ramping up into launching the texting. But what else do we have? Next slide, pretty please, Anna. All right. So the mobile web app for the Oregon Workforce Partnership, if everybody wants to scan that QR code, you can actually check out their mobile web app. And it is a beautiful one. Did a fantastic job of making it very highly functional and aesthetically pleasing, very Oregon vibed. I like it. And everybody, please keep in mind that it is still under construction, right? So it is having some more content added to it, and they are new to the game and the mobile web app. So as you kind of browse through it, if there's anything on there that seems incomplete, it's probably because we're still working on it. So that's okay. And one question I did have for you, Georgia, with the mobile web app and how you plan on using it, and you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier of, you're not reinventing the wheel here. You're not building everything twice, right? So it is important to know that you can link out existing resources within the mobile web, right? And I know one of the kind of questions you got asked when you were approaching Engage by Cell and throwing it out there as a potential resource is, why wouldn't you just include this on the website, right? Can you kind of answer what the advantage, I suppose, of having this instead of just continuing to throw more stuff on a website is?
Yeah, there's a couple advantages. First and foremost is the text messaging integration into the mobile app. If you don't, to have the integration on your own website is possible, but a lot harder to self-manage. So using a third-party provider like Engage by Cell is cost-effective, and they have the support to assist with the connectivity that is so tedious with like any sort of phone number, texting, integration. And then just that highway in between, bridging that gap between, in my case, at least 9 different websites, regions, and the Oregon Employment Department and the WorkSource Oregon Center, in addition to all of the providers that we use for specialized trainings like learning or, our core partners. So it's just navigating this massive network of resources in a very functional, usable way. And then, most people aren't going to be directed straight to this homepage. I mean, the homepage is beautiful. We're going to be sending people with the QR code directly to the Translate services or directly to the metrics learning page where they can get their trainings. Or, there's an events function on there.
And
Can also use the Engage Guide file to upload documentation to help, facilitate their faster registration. So it's just that, like I said, it's that highway in between all of the resources all at once.
I like the highway analogy. I always lead on, information accessibility is probably the largest challenge in workforce development that I come across. It is not unique to any different workforce development board or organization across the country, right? It's all of it is, we have hundreds of different resources available to the public. And unfortunately, the public doesn't know. So it's always, how do we get that information accessibility up to the highest degree possible? And I think the highway analogy, streamlines that process. It becomes kind of an intranet, if you will, of all of the, 9 different websites or 9 or more different websites that you're kind of tasked with combining into one accessibility point that, again, pairs with that texting so well. And thank you for bringing it up with the mobile web app. You have the advantage of, if I jump on a website and maybe it's the homepage, whatever it might be, where do I even go to navigate to what I need to do? But the mobile web app has the advantage of, each page of content within that mobile web app has its own unique URL, its own unique QR code, so you can provide that direct access to that. So it's much less navigating required. It's much more streamlined. You're opening that highway up to the people. Katrina, did you have any insightful ideas on how you plan on using the mobile web app?
Well, Max has graciously given me his time on Monday, so we're at the county fair all week. And so I'm going to have a career corner set up where we'll have a desktop available for people to kind of navigate and look at, updating their resume and those services. But Engage My Cell is going to be a tool that I get to, those QR codes weave into a whole side of an exhibit hall in regards to engaging folks in surveys, specific text groups. So I'm looking forward to some time with Max to brainstorm more about that and then pilot that as well at the county fair, connecting with our rural community.
Fantastic. Thank you, Katrina. All right. Next slide, pretty please, Anna. All right. So I know one of the main challenges that everybody faces is accessibility. And that means different things for a lot of different places, right? What are I know you kind of touched on the translating and things like that. I know one of the unique challenges that the OWP and most of Oregon probably face on kind of a more grander scale is rural members of the communities too, right? So how do these solutions align with, bridging some of those accessibility gaps and keeping up with your accessibility standards at the OWP? Touch on that real quick. Talk about the rural community and how it's going to help them. That's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, this definitely is an asset to the rural community to be able to connect with them without making a 2-hour drive for them or for the staff. And, and then, like I said, they have the ability to upload their documents. There's a note in the chat about security protocols. And I know Max can talk in more detail about this, but all the security protocols with this web app are, up to HIPAA standards and SOC 2 compliance. So there's no real worry about a data breach or, their information isn't getting sent in an unsecure way. And then it would be up to the navigator to take that information and supply it to the database system through the WSO. So, these solutions are, accessing people that wouldn't necessarily be accessible And, through the Translate Live integration that we put in through the web app, which is a third-party integration, we're able to text or chat with people in their own language in live. So I could be chatting with Katrina in Spanish, and she would be able to read it in English. And she can write in English, and it will come back. And that is a really cool tool as well, because they have over 2,000 different language and dialects. So they're really honing in on meeting people with their own native dialect, not just language, to communicate effectively and get what they need out of the programs and understand where they're coming from. So that means a lot of around the state.
It means a lot. And I think it's important to, give as much access to those people that may not have access to that desktop computer too. A lot of our resources are more streamlined for a desktop model than it is necessarily mobile device, right? And the mobile web app really enables those people who are just operating off their cell phones, right? They might not have a laptop or even a bigger tablet or something along those lines. And the mobile web app enables it to be a much more user-friendly experience for those people as well.
Yeah,
And
smartphone is now always there. Everyone
it's always
has.
there. Yeah, and it's not going anywhere. And I wanted to touch on too as far as accessibility and Translate Live is a phenomenal conversational tool, and the mobile web app is also in OWP on their app actually uses it as well, where we are integrated with Google Translate, so any dialect essentially can be selected on the mobile web app as well. So the home screen is translated to any language that needs to be instantaneously. So breaking those kind of language barriers as well. Trina, anything to add for that?
No, you did great. Nice work, guys.
All right, perfect. I love it. All right, and the last little piece here, I know you touched on Translate Live, and it looks like there is a question potentially about it. How does Translator work if a text is sent? So that Translate Live isn't necessarily operating through the SMS platform itself, but I'm sure if you look up Translate Live, you'll get the gist of it pretty quick. It is a pretty amazing platform. And we always want to touch on the fact that, we can integrate with the Translate Lives or any web-based platform, really. I know you briefly mentioned metrics learning as well. So it's important to acknowledge and realize that, you have all of these different resources available to the people, and you can easily incorporate them or integrate them with the mobile web. Are we missing any other ones outside of Translate Live or metrics learning? I know there'll probably be more to come in the future. Anything you wanted to specifically bring up, but we've covered those two pretty well.
I think those are the actual integrations. Or the other things that we've done, we have the document uploader. We can directly connect with the navigator. We have the AI mentor that.
A good one to bring up. Yeah. So we are integrated with ChatGPT, which obviously is probably the leading AI tool just due to accessibility for everybody, right? But it definitely has its pros and it has some weaknesses, but it is a fantastic tool for example, if you go into the mobile web app, you'll see the little AI mentor there. Maybe the situation is, I haven't written a resume in 20 years and I'm jumping back into the workforce, right? And I just need that little push because oftentimes the struggle is, I don't even know where to start, right? So you can have all these different little AI questionnaires, little prompts essentially where you can build it to help kind of initiate that first push off the cliff where things start flowing afterwards, right? So maybe it's a keyword of, I'll use the resume of, what job are you applying for? And you can enter, I'm looking to be a medical assistant. It can spit out the 20 keywords you should probably include on your resume and things like that. But it's important to realize that all of these little interesting pieces of technology can work cohesively together within the mobile app. So next slide, pretty please, Anna. All right, this is the exciting slide, and this is year two's game plan here that you're going to share with everybody. But what are the long-term plans for the texting and the mobile web app? What do you see, you know, when we have this follow-up call in a year? What do you hope is what we're talking about in 12 months?
I mean, Georgia can too, but I would say what I hope you hear me say is very different things for each of my counties. I really want it to be something that would give the opportunity for innovation. So, you know, in Clatsop County, we do end up connecting more, let's say, with empty nesters, folks who, you know, their kids are kind of transitioning out of the household and they found this access and connection to the whole workforce system through Engage by Cell. And we've got them continuously engaged in upskilling, looking at what their next steps are after all their kids move out. Maybe they're looking at a career change. So that's Clatsop County. Maybe in Benton and Lincoln County, you're going to hear more about our engagement with that Guatemalan community. They're getting more access to classes quickly and knowing what's available for them to expand their language and being able to engage in services. So I just, what I'm hoping is a year from now, you hear a lot of those kinds of conversations with that statewide use of Engage by Cell, but really recognizing that each of these regions and even counties are going to have different needs and uses.
I agree. I'm excited to see what each region comes up with that works for them and their solutions. And I really want to see, you know, how quickly we, you know, move through our text messaging and have to re-up, because that is the real, you know, issue. Is like, when do we
Yeah.
need to fund this, and how, what is the demand now that people have adopted it? What does this adoption rate look like? And the future of workforce in Oregon, the future of communicating workforce in Oregon, how do we, you know, make this sustainable?
Yeah. And I think the most important thing I always lean on is the data, right? So all these things that we're going through and initiating and implementing across Oregon and then regionally within Oregon, and then in 12 months we get to sit down and look at all the data too, because that's always the proof is in the pudding, and I'm looking forward to that as well. And the next slide, final slide here, we always just like to include, because it is a very frequently asked question, on how do we get it in people's hands, right? That's always the first initiation. So there's some sample signage on what kind of the call to action can look like. And these QR codes can, again, provide you direct access straight to the mobile web app or whatever page of content, but it also can give direct access to a text message as well. So if you scan one of those subscribe now QR codes, it'll populate your phone number, or excuse me, populate a text message straight into your texting app. So all the end user has to do is hit send, and they are enrolled to receive some communication points there. But in concluding here, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them into the chat window. I know a lot of us have been engaging in there as we went along, but if anybody has any questions for myself or for Georgia or Katrina and what they're doing out in Oregon, please feel free to put them in the chat window now, or my direct contact information is listed on that slide as well. And please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Georgia, Katrina, do you have any questions for me while we're waiting? Anything like that? I know Katrina's itching to meet with me Monday and really ask me all the hard hitters, but
Follow-up would be related to the catfishing that you talked about before this.
all right, perfect. Yes, I am
Well,
going catfishing. Go ahead. Anybody? Here we go. We got to thank you. Thank you for attending, Jerry. I appreciate it very much. And I hope everyone found this very valuable and insightful, hearing kind of what the initial plans for launching Engage by Cell with the OWP across Oregon is going to look like. And we're looking forward to seeing what the results are. And I fully intend that in 12 months, we're going to have another webinar where we talk about the results of what happened. So, and if there are, let me buzz through there real quick on the chat and make sure I didn't miss any. Here we go. I'm interested in follow up on using this as a digital navigator. Absolutely, Hugh. More than happy to do that. All right. Registered. All right. I think we're good to go. Thank you again for everyone's attention for the last 40 minutes, and have a phenomenal Friday. Thank you to my guest speakers, Georgia, Katrina. You were wonderful. Very insightful, and I'm looking forward to working with you as we continue down this implementation. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Max. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Have a great day, everyone.